Albert Breer, lead content guy for Monday Morning Quarterback, is joining us. Latest article, you talk about a variety of things. We talked Jets earlier. Woody Johnson owns the Jets. Mark Murphy runs the Packers. They haven't really been vocal over the last couple of weeks. Yeah. There's a lot of people. Let's say you're Green Bay. I'll throw this at you. And you wrote about this in your article. You're Green Bay. You'd like to get a pick before the draft to give Jordan Love more help. But they need a tight end, a receiver, an edge rusher. Pretty good roster. Quarterbacks in-house. Is there a chance this thing doesn't get finalized till after the draft?
I would say like 90% this gets done like by the end of draft weekend. And I really think at this point, Colin, and I've said this to you before, I think this is on the doorstep. And it's been close for a while now. The communication isn't what it was like before and during the league meeting. But the relationships are still there. And I've said to you how important I think those are. And I think we're really at the point now where this comes down to optics, right? Like it's the Jets trying to prevent or protect against the potential like Russell Wilson in Denver scenario, and the Packers trying to manage perception on what they're getting back for an all-time great, maybe the greatest player in the history of their franchise. So I think like right now, like they've got agreement on the 2023 pick. Like I think it's going to be either 42nd or 43rd overall. The question is what the conditions are in the 24 pick and kind of how you dress that up and how that looks. And do you give the Jets protections over the sort of scenario where Rodgers gets hurt or there's a downturn? So you put a playoff condition on that or a Super Bowl condition on that pick. So it's only a one in those scenarios. So you know it's going to be, say, 20th pick or lower. And then I think on the other end, like it's the Packers coming away from this feeling like they did okay. And how can you make sure that? How can you assure Mark Murphy that he can go to his fan base and say, I got fair value here? There's also on top of that the idea that maybe Rodgers only plays a year. Now the Jets think he's going to play 2, but maybe he only plays a year. Like, how do you protect against that? And the Jets and Packers have talked about that, maybe tying the 2025 pick to that. So there are some moving parts here, but I think everybody's sort of in the same area on what it's going to take to get it done. And now I think it's sort of down to managing optics for both teams. And as you know, like that comes down to the decision-making of the people at the highest places in the organization. And for the Jets, that's the owner, Woody Johnson. For the Packers, that's the president, Mark Murphy.
Okay, so now there are stories leaking on C.J. Stroud, Mike Lombardi, former exec. I hear he's not easy to coach. I don't see a lot of juice. I think he's a stable guy. I think he's like Jared Goff, not quite as talented a thrower of the football, but sits in the pocket, doesn't move a ton, needs the pocket to be comfortable mostly. Let's say the Cowboys don't draft a quarterback. Is that a possibility? Because by the way, they need a lot of pieces. All right. So, Texans. If they don't draft Texans, if the Texans don't draft a quarterback number 2, is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think you can look at the history of the two guys in charge. Nick Caserio has been in the league for 23 years. He's never been part of a team that's drafted a quarterback higher than 62nd overall. That was Jimmy Garoppolo with the Patriots in 2014. DeMeco Ryans was with the team that drafted a quarterback high in the first round, traded 3 first-round picks to get there. That was Trey Lance. DeMeco Ryans went to 3 NFC championship games as a coach with 2 quarterbacks not named Trey Lance. So these guys have seen it done different ways. And I think they both have confidence that they can build different ways and that they don't necessarily need to take 1 second overall. I think if Bryce Young were to fall to him, which is highly unlikely at this point, I think they would take Bryce Young. But if there's a guy they're less sure of there as second overall, I don't think DeMeco Ryans would be afraid to say to his owner, we need to go take Will Anderson. We took a defensive player in San Francisco second overall in 2019. And Nick Bosa has got us to 3 NFC title games and a Super Bowl as, maybe the best player on the team. And so, I think that the history of the two guys plays into it. I think the fact that it's 2 guys working together for the first time plays into it. And then on the other side of this, I think ownership's going to have a say too. They probably want the quarterback position settled. So I don't know that they know what they're going to do if Young's not there for them there at number 2 quite yet. But I certainly think it's a discussion point, and I don't think it's a sure thing that they're taking a quarterback second overall at all.
Yeah, there's a coach told you, what was your reaction that Bryce Young's got some Steph Curry qualities? What was your reaction to that?
Yeah. And as a coach who has pretty good institutional knowledge of him, I think it's a really interesting way of looking at it. And the idea was that both guys play the game very calmly, and both guys have natural instincts for the position, and both guys know where to go with the ball at all times. And both guys are great leaders, and both guys play bigger than their size. And I think it's just sort of this sense that you have watching a guy with Steph Curry. It looks like he was born to play basketball. With this guy, you look at him on the football field, and it looks like he's at home out there in the football field. And that's how he manages his deficiencies out there. That's how he manages the height deficiency. That's how he manages the weight deficiency too, because he's got a way of avoiding hits and keeping himself out of trouble that way. And so I think as much as anything else, it's the court sense that Steph Curry has out there, where you can see the real translation to Bryce Young, who's got great field sense as a football player.
We always like to ask you a Patriots question because you know them well. Mm-hmm. Is that Bill O'Brien is now in? It's been so public. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Belichick was always sort of reluctant to show love to Brady. He strangely showed a ton of love to Cam. And now he's moved back to, I'm not going to show any love to Mac Jones. I mean, he really praised Cam Newton constantly. Yeah. And when Brady and Mac, he's more reluctant. Did they bring in Bill O'Brien to just give this kid love and build his confidence? Do Bill and Bill get along great? How is that going to work?
No, I don't think they did it to build his confidence. If you go back a year, Colin, they actually, talked very highly of Mac. Bill Belichick through April and May and June and July of last year spoke glowingly of Mac Jones and really thought he was going to take a huge step. And I think internally they felt like the way he handled the coaching, the way he handled adversity during the 2022 season wasn't very good. So that was why when Bailey Zappi got in there and the questions came, is Mac definitely your starter when he gets back? That's why Bill left that open-ended. And it's why Bill even now won't declare Mac as starter. He's saying Bailey Zappi is going to have a legitimate shot to come in and compete. And I believe that Bailey Zappi is going to have a chance to compete. I think they felt like handling Mac the way they did last offseason didn't really work. So they're going to handle it a little bit of a different way this offseason. And at the same time, Bill O'Brien gives him a fresh start, right? Working with a defensive coach and a special teams coach last year, I think we all had our questions at the time. Obviously, it didn't work out. Now you're bringing in Bill O'Brien, who has great institutional knowledge of what Mac Jones did in college. He didn't coach him there, but he knows what Alabama does and what Mac Jones did well at Alabama. He also has great institutional knowledge of what they do in New England, having been the offensive coordinator there before. Now it's on Bill O'Brien to create a better environment for the kid so they can figure out where his ceiling is going to be, because they're going to have to make a decision on his fifth-year option a year from now.
Yep.
So I think Bill O'Brien's become a really important figure in the development of Mac Jones now. And my understanding is to this point, Mac's been around, Bailey's been around. They've sort of siloed Bill O'Brien off and saying, this is your project to get the quarterback position right. Let's see if you can do it.
Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback. Good seeing you, man. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.